So today's review is of the Hifiman HE400I planar magnetic open back headphone. This is a bit of a retro review because this is a headphone that has been out for a very long time and has gone through many revisions, namely the 2020 revision, which comes with updated headband and so on. This is the middle version, which comes with 2.5mm dual connectors instead of the coaxial connectors which it used to have. Starting off, the build is fairly solid. There's a lot of plastic, but it is not unusual something at this price. There's a metal grille, you have adjusting mechanism in the headband, which has a positive click and is quite nice. However, I will say that for certain people, especially people with very large heads, it might be a slightly tight fit. The headband itself is a pleather, which hugs the head and spreads the weight quite evenly, so it is a very nicely designed headband. On that, the headband itself is metal and does hold up in terms of durability. The cable it comes with is quite a stiff fabric wrapped cable. However, I think that it is quite uncomfortable and stiff when being used, so I do recommend that anyone that is planning to use a HE400i to invest in a slightly better aftermarket cable, especially for ergonomics. Starting with the bass itself is quite present for something of its price. It definitely sounds harder in the bass than something like HD600 or HD650. It has reasonably good extension, and the bass overall is fairly tight and fairly detailed for its price. And the control of the bass is also quite nice. It never bleeds into the mid-range and has that linear bass presentation that most planars tend to have. However, one area which it does suffer in is dynamics compared to more expensive headphones. It is clear that when coming from a more expensive headphone, that this is a headphone that is a bit compressed sounding, especially in the bass. So moving on to the mid-range follows that pattern of being a fairly uncolored presentation. It is linear, it is balanced, and it has enough presence to give vocals body. However, it also has enough sparkliness in the upper mids to give certain female vocals a bit of a sparkly quality, which can be quite pleasing. I'd say that the mid-range of this headphone is one of the best parts. It is linear, it is accurate, and it is also very detailed and very controlled. And I think that apart from the HD600 and 650, this is probably the best mid-range presentation in the sub $300 price point. Moving on, the treble, however, is where some things pop up. The treble on this headphone is a bit bright, and it is mainly due to one or two treble peaks, which I do not remember the exact frequencies of, but it is present. And those treble peaks give a bit of a harsh edge to a lot of recordings. While this is nothing on the level of Bare Dynamic or something like HD800, it is still noticeable, and it does give a lot of recordings a slightly brighter tone. And for that, I think it does pair well with certain genres, which don't mind the extra bit of treble energy, for example, acoustic or orchestral. However, in certain tracks, which are mastered brightly to start with, such as rap or modern music, that extra treble energy does make cymbal hits especially a bit too bright. So for that, I think the treble may be good for some people in terms of what music they listen to. For other people, the treble presentation might be a bit too bright. That being said, extension is fairly good for its price. I'd say that extension isn't as good as high-end headphones. However, it still does give you a lot of air, a lot of sparkliness up top. Detail on this headphone is quite competitive, although I think it does slightly fall behind HD600 and 650, which are pretty much the benchmarks for this price. It is very, very close, and it does outperform those two headphones, especially in the bass department. However, it does fall behind a bit in the mid-range and treble. Other than that, against any other headphone in its price point, it is very competitive. So the dynamics of this headphone I've went into a little bit. It is definitely slightly compressed compared to higher-end headphones. However, I will say that in its price point, it is definitely more dynamic than the HD600 and 650. And also the Audio-Technica R70, it is more dynamic than that. However, it does fall behind in terms of dynamics when being compared with some Bare Dynamics. I think Bare Dynamics are a bit underrated when it comes to how much they slam. And also for soundstage imaging, I think that the HE400i is slightly intimate. However, it is still definitely wider than a HD600 and 650, not as wide as a DT880, for example, and it images fairly well. I can't feel any obvious holes in the imaging, so it is quite nicely done. And overall, this is a nice little introduction for a lot of people to the audiophile world. It is cheap, it is quite a balanced sound signature, and it definitely provides a sound signature and performance that plays well to a lot of genres and a lot of preferences. So if you're someone who's looking who's looking for a entry to the audiophile world, this is a great point to start.